You got the remote? Yeah. You're good to go? You want the chair? Whatever you need. Okay, thank you. Let's do this.
You gotta turn it on.
It's on. Just wait. What did you say?
Yeah, my computer's off. Wait for that. There you go.
Give it a minute.
So, let me just ask the question. The last time that you wrote an offer with a buyer, how long did that take you? Half an hour? Hour? Half an hour? So I wrote an offer last week with my buyer that didn't take me any time. And I'll go through this process and I'll tell you how that happened. So I give, whenever I meet with any buyer, these sheets that you're going to see up here, and it just comes like this, a couple cards, and literally what I say to them right away is, depending on my level of, comfortability with them, I said, my first sheet is this. Here's a bunch of stuff I wrote about myself, and it's all true, but we're not going to read it. And then I go to the next one. Okay? I don't think you need to, if you're sitting down there with them at the table, I guess I don't feel the need to go through and explain myself and who I am and why me, because we're already there. Now, then what I go into is page 2. And what I say with them, and I do a majority of this on my iPad, in addition to handing them the physical sheets that they can take home. Okay? So page 2, I go through and I say, now this is the meat and potatoes of the home buying process. Essentially, this is your roadmap from what we're doing today in selecting a real estate agent. And I always say, selecting a real estate agent, which we're doing today, and I look at them because that's that pattern interrupt that you learn in bold. That's going to tell them that, hey, we're here to pick you and you alone, okay? We don't say, some people interview 5 agents. Don't go into that. Go, you're here to pick me and we're working together from now on, okay? We also go into obtaining a financial pre-approval and then analyzing your needs in a buyer consultation, which we're also doing today. So here's where you find out, and I'm sure you all have your own sheets that say, what are you looking for in a home? Do you have a preferred closer? Do you have, who's your lender and their contact info and your top 5 wish lists, all that. So we go through that afterwards as well. And then all I say is from there we select properties, view properties, write an offer to purchase, negotiate the terms, and accept the contract. Okay? And I just go through it that fast. And I say, here's how you know that I am going to be protecting you to the fullest ability. Okay? Is that when we sit down and write a contract, we're going to make sure that you're protected, and we're going to have a home inspection. We're going to guarantee that you know of anything and everything that could potentially be hidden, prior to actually purchasing the home. Okay? Our second level of protection is in mortgage financing. We want to be sure that even though you have a pre-approval, that they're going to do a credit check, underwriting. We're going to have an appraisal to guarantee that you're not paying any more than what the home is actually worth. We're going to have a survey if needed, and we'll go through and I like to send my business to Maria, and you and Maria will talk about insurance and all that stuff as well. So we also say then the third and final way that you're going to be protected is by conducting a title search. And what a title search is going to entail and do for you is it'll guarantee that there's no other liens or encumbrances on the property that will affect your useful enjoyment, and that when you purchase a home, the only thing that is owed against the home is the mortgage that you have put on it when you decide to purchase. Now, seeing as how there's all 3 levels of protection, do you feel safe now moving forward into the purchase? And most of the time it's, yep, they're right there with you. So then I just say we obtain funds, we close on the property, and you take possession. So I always tell them to keep this stuff handy just because, it can act as a guide for them throughout the process. Now, especially new agents in here, this is all right from the KW website. I didn't take anything on here. I may have customized it a little bit to myself, but it's all stuff that you all have access to. So next we say, okay, in making an offer, there's several things that you can negotiate. First and foremost, the price. We also can address the move-in date, put it depending on if you're renting or not, we can move it back in the month or, move it up based upon whenever the seller moves out. Typically, we're anywhere from 30 to 60 days in order for you to actually take possession of the home from the time that you write your offer, okay? We also talk about any other additional personal property. Sometimes there's swing sets and all that. We always make sure that that's on an addendum that does not get sent to Maria, okay? So, and then I just say this, they're going to do one of three things. They're going to either accept the offer, they're going to reject the offer, or they're going to counter. And that's where we play that little back and forth game until we end up in a win-win situation and we can move forward, okay? So just use those terminology as well, just like the win-win and all that stuff, just because it'll help to make them feel comfortable, okay? So essentially, this in the box here, that is the roadmap, but it's on the mortgage side, okay? And this is something that I've added, and it's something that Lori Knutson actually did for me a while back, and Maria has it if any of you would like to add it to yours. The biggest thing that I found helpful in going through this is going through the do nots with your buyers, okay? Do not have your credit pulled by other creditors. Do not change jobs or quit your job. Do not buy a car, truck, or van. Do not use credit cards excessively. And then I always use an example. I say, this happened to me, and I know you wouldn't do this because you're more responsible than that. But I had a buyer who had, an offer on a home. They were very, they're well within their debt to income ratios. And then they went out and they put a bunch of furniture in the new home on a credit card. And that threw off the ratios, and they weren't able to close on the property. Now, you don't want that to happen, do you? No. And of course they're going to say no. So then they read through all the do nots, and they make sure that they don't do them. Okay? So, we always recommend that you have a home inspection. Okay? I know you probably have an uncle who's a contractor, just like I do, and a brother who may be an electrician, but the home inspectors that we use are ASHI certified, and they do this every day. Okay, so we always recommend. And that's all I touch on that. The last thing that I've included is a moving checklist. This is just a checklist for you to help make your move easier. Okay, so whenever you decide to make a move, or whenever we have a purchase agreement on a property, we're going to make sure that all the utilities have been transferred, your professional services know, any clubs or insurance companies and all business accounts know that you're moving from one to the other, and you have this little list here just to check all those off to make sure that you contacted them, and that'll just help make your transition a much smoother process. Now, here's some of the vendor partners that we work with. I can go through and we can talk about any of them. You can enter yours, please do. But that's essentially the gist of what I hand them. Okay? Now, that's it there. Okay, let's flip some lights back on. Now, one of the things that I do with a buyer every time that we sit down and meet is I run through a full purchase agreement with them at the time of initial contact. Okay? What that guarantees is this. All of their questions are answered up front, and when I go out at 7 o'clock on some random Tuesday night and show them this property, that I can go home and write up their contract and send it off to them to electronically sign, because they know exactly what they're signing, and there's no question. They don't have to decide anything other than the closing date and any other additional personal property and the offer price. Okay, and so we go through. I'll go through the entire purchase agreement with them on my iPad. I don't have to print it off, and you don't need an iPad to do this. Obviously, you can just have one printed out. So I have it loaded into PDF Expert. Let me just pull it up here. Okay. So we go through from the beginning. We talk a little bit about agency, okay? And this is your explanation of agency as well. We go into our buyer contract, okay? We go through the buyer contract and what that exactly means, and our right to represent them, and what their obligations are in working with us as an agent, okay? So once we've gone through that, we have the Keller Williams specific disclosure. Sorry.
Do you have them sign that right then?
I do, but we'll get to that at the
Oh.
end. Okay? So we go through the buyer contract, and then we go through earnest money and what earnest money is and how, what it can do in a purchase. Okay? And from the Sean Kokoska bold script, what I've been doing lately is, and it's worked about 50-50 because I don't think people are used to it up here, but I've actually been having people write me an earnest money check on the spot there as well. What it does is it guarantees their commitment to me as well. We submit it. Lori Marcy puts it into, our trust account, and that way whenever we submit the file where, the earnest money, where it says the check number, I just put in agent's trust or in trust account, and that way they know that we've already received the earnest money, it's already been cashed, and they're good to go for it. So I would suggest starting to do that as well, because that's just a secondary level of commitment on behalf of the buyer to you, because now they're not walking away from just a contract if something were to happen. Now they're, they have to go through the process of getting that $1,000 back, and it becomes more difficult. Not that any of you would want to sever ties with a buyer, however, those situations do occur.
How do you ask?
So how do I ask? Okay, let me just get through that, Perry. Okay, so we go through the purchase agreement. I just explained that, here's where we put in your name, and I have them, you all write purchase agreements identically, for the most part, okay? So we just talk about the property address, everything owned within the property. Here's where you put the offer price. We talk about percentage down and financing, and then we just say that it's a first mortgage, and here's where we check the type of mortgage and the date of closing. We go through and we talk about, being subject to the sale of their property, whether or not they want to have a home inspection. We talk about how property is conveyed. It may be a special or limited warranty deed if it's a foreclosure, but 90% of the time with a traditional sale that it's a standard warranty deed. Then we talk about the seller paying any outstanding assessments that are there and them having the protection within the contract for that. Just that taxes will be prorated from the day of closing, and then possession shall be delivered immediately at that time, and title and exam will be provided. It says that it's legally subdivided land. If there's any mechanics liens, they'll be cleared up as of the time of close. Dimensions are as accurate as we know. We haven't gone in and measured anything, but we're relying on information from the seller. Calculation of days, and then we also talk about seller's disclosure statement, that they will receive one of those when they do sign. City sewer, city water, go through that. And then we talk a little bit about closing costs, inspection addendums. And then I have both a conventional and an FHA financing addendum in there because sometimes they have decided, other times they may be on the fence. We typically will go through whichever one is pertinent for their purchase, because most of the time when you sit down with them. We also discuss arbitration and whether or not they'd like to sign arbitration or decline arbitration. We talk about that right here. So then we go to an addendum, okay? So after that, I go, now, do you have any questions about the purchase agreement and what you're going to be signing when you make an offer on a home? And most of the time it's no, because you've explained things so thoroughly. All right, now we're going to go back to that buyer agency, and because, we're meeting today and we're going to start looking at homes, all of the buyers that we work with agree to buyer agency, or as from the Kokoska script, 100% of our buyers choose buyer agency, because ultimately then it becomes their choice, okay? And they know that because on that roadmap, when you said selecting a real estate agent and you did that pattern interrupt, which we're doing today, they know that they're choosing you. So your actions have led them to know that they're going to be signing a buyer contract, okay? So, and again, I do it on here just because it's convenient, but you certainly can have one with you. I always have them pre-filled out, but we go through and we talk about agency. It just says, Minnesota says that we can work as a seller's broker or sub-agent, or in this case, in our relationship, a buyer's broker. So what I'm going to need you to do is I'm going to need you to sign here and date here, and then initial there, that just says that you've had the opportunity to review the predatory offender information, which is at the bottom of the next page, and my duties to you are loyalty, obedience, disclosure, confidentiality, reasonable care, and accounting. And they go through and they sign there and initial there. And then since this is all pre-filled out with the dates, I just go through and I explain how buyer agency works. It just says, listen, I'm very confident that this is going to be a great relationship and that I can help you move into a home with as little headache as possible. But one of the things that we need is to solidify that relationship. And you can blame it on the broker if you need to, because he's the easy scapegoat. But just say, let's just get this buyer agency contract signed. And what that'll do is it'll just guarantee you that, you're not hounded by somebody when you go into an open house because you're already represented. And, you can even give them cards at the end of when they sign as their open house passes. I've done that in the past as well. Just says that I'm going to be working my hardest to find you a home. And in return, you agree to purchase your home from me because as you may or may not know, you don't have to pay anything to work with me as a buyer. And they say, oh, I didn't know that. You say, yeah, our commissions are covered by the seller. So it just says that you agree to, purchase a home with me, any of the homes that I show you. And if you purchase within 180 days, well, we agree to get compensated then the 3%. So it says that I can show you residential investments and residential personal property. I always have them sign at line 66. It just says they shall arrange for a qualified closing agent or their attorney to conduct the closing. I certainly can handle everything for them, but ultimately it is their choice where they'd like to close. And so they have the option to do so. We talk a little bit about dual agency and what that'll mean. Some people get a little skittish at dual agency, and I think the best way to handle that is just to say, listen, I can understand, you having a little bit of a conflict with, the homes that I represent. The truth is, and the NAR statistic is about 12%. The truth is that we hog about 10% of our deals. So 10% of your transactions every year, you're double ending anyway. But this says that I can't show you, if you don't agree to this says that I can't show you anything that anyone from our office has listed. And there's some great properties out there. And once it's spun that way, they sign it right away. Pardon me. So then we go through. It just says that I am working with other potential buyers at this time. That notice regarding predatory offender information again. And then electronic signatures are valid and binding in the state of Minnesota. All I have to do then is signature, customer signature. They sign it. And then what I'll do from there is I'll send it directly to their phone from here. And 90% of the time, I can hear their phone buzz across the table that they've received the email from me. So I know that they've received it. Okay? So put it in your file, add it to your loop. We also then go through I do that last. I sent it to them last. I forgot about the KW disclosure. We go through the KW disclosure, and then we talk about that $299 administrative services fee. And I guess the way that I explain that is, something that our brokerage charges does go to Keller Williams Realty International, and it's not a profit center to me. The good news for you as a buyer is you're more than likely going to be asking for seller paid closing costs, and so they can cover that for you. So it is a cost to you that you will not be paying.
Really?
Yep.
You haven't picked up your closing costs?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that?
If you're negotiating seller pay closing costs in your contracts.
That's part of it, automatically.
Yeah. So, does anybody have any questions? Because from here, once they've signed, once they've gone through a purchase agreement, I can meet them at the house, I can show them 4 or 5 houses, whatever, and if they decide on one, I'll go back, I'll fill out the electronics, or fill out everything in Instanet, throw it into .loop, have them, assign the signatures in .loop, and then send it out to them. They click it, sign it back to me. We never have to get together and go through everything because I already have the earnest money. I've already gone through the full contract with them. And all they have to decide on is how much they'd like to offer and when they'd like to close it. So,
what do you do? So you do all that electronically, but do you leave any leave behinds with them? Like, for instance, your presentation about the process and the flow?
Yep, this is the only thing that I leave with them. And then, they've received a copy of the buyer contract that they've already received. So I usually leave them a couple cards, just that brief handout that I went through, and then typically at the end I'll give them some more cards, and I'll just say, feel free to use these as, if you're driving around and see an open house that you want to go through, walk in and they're going to ask you to sign in. I just respectfully ask that you leave this in place of you signing in so that they know you're represented.
They probably like that too.
Yeah. Because then they're not being hounded.
Nice.
Hi, Judy. That's how you get all that business.
I like that earnest money cashing thing from a lending standpoint, then we're not sitting waiting till the last
Right.
minute, waiting for earnest money to clear.
Yeah, it's been great.
So what's your dialogue when you collect that and how, when it's not your listing, and you just have to send that over to the other listing?
Yep.
company?
So Lori Marcy's cutting one for me right now to another agent. So essentially it goes like this. Now, you know, I'm going to say any number of ways, but in the past mine's gone, well, I know that you like to plan ahead because we're meeting a little bit early for something like this. One of the things that's going to be required regardless of if you purchase tomorrow or if you purchase in 3 months is earnest money. Now, you can choose to have that money set aside right now and I can handle that for you, or you can wait and just write a check at that time. Now ultimately it's your decision, but we found that when we have earnest money, our offers are a lot stronger.
It makes your financing go smooth.
And it makes your financing go much smoother.
And you don't have to write a check to a different broker.
Yep. And they write everything to me right there.
And then if you're out of town and we decided you want to write an offer, you can do everything electronically. I can get earnest money right through the
Yep.
listing agent. Blah, blah, blah.
Can I add one thing that I do in mine that you didn't do in yours?
Sure.
Well, what I've been doing lately is on every buyer's contract, I add in the home warranty paid by the seller, if nothing else, as a negotiating tool to give the seller something to cross off and hopefully leave the price where we were asking. And most of the time, they're willing to pay for it anyways. So it's just adding it in for your clients and it's paid for. If the sellers choose not to pay for it, your buyers still have the option if they want it or not. But I bet you 85% of my contracts get them signed and sealed with the home warranty for the buyers.
Great. The only other thing that I will add is that I don't have anything on the advantages of buyer agency, exclusive buyer agency in this packet, and that will be probably my third to last page after home inspections and before the homeowner checklist. So.
I have a question for anyone and everyone, and I probably make it more difficult than what it is, but arbitration.
Yep.
I would like to hear some examples of how people share arbitration.
So
I always
here's-
stumble, I feel like. with
So
that
here's how I share it.
one. Okay.
Okay. Well, what we're doing is we're deciding right now how you would like to handle a situation if one arises as part of the purchase agreement, so that we don't have to decide, dependent upon the situation. Okay. So we have the option of either going to arbitration or going to court. Arbitration is a lot less costly, but the decisions are final and cannot be appealed. So if for some reason you were to be walking up on that roof and fall through and you had agreed to sign arbitration, and all parties had agreed to sign arbitration, it goes to the arbitrator, and the arbitrator might say, well, they obviously didn't disclose it, it's their duty to fix. The arbitrator might also say, you know what, you've tripped 4 times since you've been in here, you're the clumsiest guy I know, you fell through because of your own clumsiness, and now it's your duty. Okay? Legally, we can't advise you one way or the other. However, I will tell you this. If all parties agree to arbitration now, regardless of the situation that arises, you're bound to arbitration. Should you choose to decline arbitration right now, you have the option of choosing arbitration or a court settlement based upon the issue that arises.
Isn't it that you can only go to arbitration if all parties agree to it?
All parties.
Yeah,
It's no.
people define it.
That's no. So you're bound to arbitration if all parties agree to it.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that if something little happens and no one agreed to the arbitration, that you can't choose to go to arbitration based upon that
So
issue.
you can choose in the future date if you don't agree.
Correct.
Correct.
However, if all parties sign it, you're bound to that option and that option alone, regardless of the circumstance or issue.
And arbitration costs more than small claims court in most situations. It's a sliding scale based on what their award system will be.
Arbitration more, you said?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd stay away from the cost.
Yeah.
I just go in and say, this is completely separate from the contract, the purchase agreement, but I have to go through this with you. If something comes up after closing and you decide that found out the seller lied about something in the disclosure statement, you have the choice of either going through arbitration, which you sit down at a table with a retired lawyer or judge who's doing arbitration. He decides. The benefit to arbitration is they don't have caps on what they can award. Through the court system, you can go through the court system too. That's your second option. And with that, you go in front of a judge, and he does have a cap on what he can award. Now, if you decide that you want to do arbitration, sign arbitration right now, that's great. But that does lock you into it if the seller signs it also. Through the court system, at any time you can change your mind and go through arbitration if all parties agree to it. So it's your choice. You can either sign it or not. I can't tell you which way to do it.
I also tell them it has to be brought up 24 months after closing. That is their time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to prove that you were intentionally wronged by the other party. So you can't just say, well, I got water in my basement. Well, just because you got water in the basement doesn't mean that the seller intentionally wronged you. It might never have had water in the basement. So,
There's got to be testing involved to prove that there was obvious evidence of previous damage from water and blah, blah, blah. Do you find that carrying a pocket knife helps with the...
I bring a whole Cutco knife.
Let's give Eric a round of applause. So, if you like this,